The true voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. You know, that quote from Marcel Proust, it just perfectly sets the stage for our deep dive today.
It really does.
Imagine a secret buried for centuries, just waiting under the earth. And then it gets rediscovered thousands of miles away in some dusty archive. That's exactly what we're unpacking.
Indeed. We're looking into Kashmir's hidden ancient past today, some really significant Buddhist and Hindu archaeological finds that are actually challenging the historical narratives we've held for a long time.
Yeah, and our mission here is to pull out the most important bits of knowledge from this great article in the print. It's called Kashmir's Buried Buddhist Past Unearthed. Think of this as, well, your shortcut to getting properly informed on a pretty critical current affairs topic.
Right.
And this is really relevant for you listening, especially if you're prepping for exams like the UPSC mains or prelims, but also, honestly, just for anyone interested in how history gets, rewritten by new finds. We're going to critically discuss what's in this article.
Absolutely. Go beyond the headlines.
So the way this whole thing started is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Really serendipitous. It wasn't like digging in the ground initially. It actually started with a grainy, faded photo back in October 2023. Archaeologist Mohammad Ajmal Shah, he was in France, right, on a fellowship, and he's in the Guimet Museum archives in Paris, and he just stumbles upon this picture, 3 stupas from Baramulla. He said it was one of the happiest moments of his life.
Wow. You can imagine.
Yeah. And it basically kicked off this whole new look into Kashmir's sort of lesser-known archaeological past.
And that excitement, it was completely justified.
Yeah.
That photo was the first real clue, the first piece of evidence for what might be one of Kashmir's largest stupa complexes.
Okay.
And the really significant part, the potential game changer, is its link to the Fourth Buddhist Council. Now, if that's confirmed, well, it's not just another site. It could fundamentally reshape how we understand Buddhism's origins in the valley.
How so? What would that change?
Well, it could position Kashmir more centrally as a crucible for Mahayana Buddhism's development and spread, a role that's often been attributed perhaps more heavily to other regions. So it's a pretty big deal, potentially.
Okay, so Shah finds this photo in Paris, but how do you go from, a faded picture to finding the actual spot in Kashmir? If you go to Zanpora now in Baramulla district, what you see are these 3 big mounds.
Right.
They're just rising out of wild grass, rice fields nearby, the Qayoom River winding in the background. It's quite a picture. You even see kids climbing on them sometimes, totally unaware of the history underneath.
That's exactly it. And for Shah and his 10-member team, finding the general area in 2022 was just step one. The really meticulous part was proving these mounds were ancient stupas, not just, natural hills.
Right, you'd have to be sure.
Definitely. They made over a dozen visits, spending like 10 hours each time, just combing over every inch, every curve, every crack. They did multiple surveys, used drone imagery, studied the stones themselves, the texture, the composition. All that groundwork is absolutely crucial before you can even think about digging.
Makes sense. And then I guess came the bureaucracy, getting permissions and all that.
Always, yes. The usual maze. But Shah was smart. He took his preliminary findings and started presenting them at academic conferences. And it was at one of these, Vitasa 2024 in Srinagar, that his work caught the attention of Kuldeep Krishan Siddha.
Ah, the Director of Archives, Archaeology, and Museums.
Exactly. Newly appointed. Siddha was impressed. Shah presented detailed findings the very next day, and pretty soon after, funds were actually sanctioned. This would be the first formal excavation in Jammu and Kashmir in quite some time.
Wow, that's a quick turnaround. What does that signal, that kind of immediate support?
Oh, it signals a renewed commitment, definitely. A potentially faster track for archaeological work, which is very exciting for the field there. And Zanpur itself, it really is looking like a monumental discovery.
But monumental how?
Well, Shah's paper, the title is New Investigations in Buddhist Archaeology of Kashmir, a preliminary survey, describes it as potentially one of the largest Buddhist complexes. They found clear evidence of 3 stupas plus an apsidal hall.
An apsidal hall?
Yeah, it's a specific architectural feature, sort of a long hall with a rounded end, common in ancient religious buildings. But it's the sheer scale of Zanpura that really makes it stand out from other finds in Kashmir.
Okay, that's crucial. So zooming out a bit to the bigger historical picture, why is Zanpura seen as so pivotal, especially for ancient Buddhist history?
The major breakthrough potential, as I mentioned, is this strong possible link to the Fourth Buddhist Council. Now, this isn't just about confirming an event happened there. It could really reshape our understanding of Buddhism's development in the valley. It suggests Kashmir wasn't just, receiving Buddhist ideas, but maybe it was an active center, an epicenter even, especially for Mahayana Buddhism. That makes it a key piece in a much larger global historical puzzle.
And what about older accounts? We have travelogues from ancient travelers, right? Do these findings line up with those? Or maybe change how we read them?
That's a great point. They absolutely do seem to align. Take Xuanzang, the famous Chinese Buddhist monk from the 7th century.
Ah, yes, Xuanzi.
He actually entered Kashmir through Baramulla, and his descriptions of the stupas he saw, they closely resemble the features being uncovered now at Zianpora. It's like an echo from the past, giving archaeological weight to these old texts.
That's incredible.
It is. Plus, the artifacts found on site, bits of terracotta, Kushan-era pottery, mainly this redware type, they help date the site to roughly the 1st to 3rd century CE.
The Kushan period. That was important for Buddhism, wasn't it?
Hugely important, vital for spreading Buddhism across Central Asia into China. Also key for the development of Mahayana Buddhism itself, and those distinct Gandhara and Mathura art styles. But again, what's really striking here is the scale.
Right, you keep coming back to the size.
Because compared to other known Buddhist sites in Kashmir, places like Harwan, Ushkur, Parihaspura, Zianpora seems massive.
Yeah.
Multiple large stupas. It makes it a much stronger candidate for hosting something like the Fourth Buddhist Council, which would have needed a big space for lots of people, not like the smaller sites found before.
Okay, it's clear Zianpora is huge, but this seems part of a wider shift, doesn't it, in how archaeology is approaching Kashmir's past. I read archaeologists talking about looking beyond and deeper than Islam.
Yes. Exactly. There's a definite concerted effort now. For a long time, there was perhaps a common perception, maybe simplified, that Kashmir's significant history sort of began with the Islamic period. But archaeologists are now systematically peeling back those layers, and what they're finding is this incredibly rich, diverse, multicultural past that goes back millennia before that.
So what else are they finding beyond these Buddhist sites?
Oh, quite a bit. There's renewed focus on the legacy of Kashmir's first indigenous Hindu king, Lalitaditya. They're finding ancient artifacts, some depicting practices like sati, though obviously not practiced anymore. Sacred springs, called nags locally, often found near temples. Even down in Jammu, the ancient Buddhist site of Ambaran on the Chenab River is getting fresh attention.
Right.
It's really about recovering the full spectrum, the whole multi-layered story of the region, which for anyone studying history, maybe especially for a UPSC aspirant, gives a much more complete, nuanced picture.
Absolutely. And speaking of these efforts, let's talk about Irfan Qayoom. He's part of this first wave of Kashmiri archaeology scholars, and his fieldwork sounds just fascinating.
It really is. Qayoom was apparently inspired by Kalhana's Raj Taranjini, that's the 12th century chronicle. It mentions a Raja Luo building something like 84,000 stone structures in the Lowlab Valley.
84,000? Sounds like a lot. Maybe legendary.
Quite possibly apocryphal in number, yes, but it sparked his interest. So his method involved literally traveling daily, talking to residents, collecting local folklore, asking about any unusual old structures. He basically conducted what he calls the first ever census of archaeological sites in that whole region. Really grassroots work.
And his PhD is on King Lalitaditya Muktapida, the Karkota king from the 8th century. His historical record has always been a bit fragmented, right?
Very fragmented, yes. More known from texts than from actual ruins, until recently. Qayoom's work is starting to change that. He's found things like 3 small Shiva temples, 2 sacred springs at a place called Lavneg, and this monolithic rock, Setbardan, which has a trefoil arch that's a key architectural motif from early medieval temples.
Interesting. What's the connection there?
Well, he connects it to the Matrika cult. This was an ancient tradition focused on powerful mother goddesses, which Kahana himself mentions was very popular in Kashmir back then.
Wow.
So what's huge here is that for ages, Lalitaditya was almost legendary, existing mainly in chronicles. Qayoom's finds are giving us actual, tangible evidence. Bricks and stones that help validate these historical accounts. It's like making a legendary figure real through archaeology, bridging that gap between text and ground.
That's really powerful, bridging myth and history. Now, beyond these sort of grand structures or royal connections, has this work uncovered anything about, say, daily life, beliefs, more personal cultural practices? I was intrigued by those memorial stones mentioned in the article.
Ah, yes, the memorial stones. That's a fantastic example of gaining insight into past cultural practices. Qayoom's survey in Burnai in the Lowlab Valley uncovered 11 of these stones stelae, technically. And it's apparently the first ever archaeological work specifically on these types of stones in Kashmir.
What do they show?
They date back to the early Hindu period, during the Karkota dynasty. And they have these vivid depictions. Some show women with raised arms, possibly performing sati, wearing bangles, sometimes holding a lemon or a bridal veil, often in that namaskaram pose showing piety.
Right.
Others show men on horseback, armed, highlighting martial traditions, valor. It's a really compelling, quite intimate glimpse into the indigenous culture of Kashmir's past. It is important to stress, of course, that sati is a custom no longer practiced.
Understood. It really does sound like a renaissance for archaeology in Kashmir, especially considering, as the article notes, archaeology only became a formal discipline at Kashmir University quite recently, in 2017. That's producing this whole new generation of scholars.
It absolutely feels like a new era, and Director Sitsa seems key here, fostering collaboration with this open-door policy he has for archaeologists. There's even this first-ever convergence project happening now.
Convergence project.
Yeah, bringing together the Directorate of Archives, Archaeology and Museums, Kashmir University, and the ASI, the Archaeological Survey of India. That kind of collaboration is new and really promising. Now, apparently they faced initial challenges like lacking some specialized tools, but they're making rapid progress, marking out sites, planning excavations, dividing areas into quadrants for systematic study. It feels like things are moving.
Okay, this brings up a really important point for you listening, especially if you're trying to absorb knowledge quickly but also deeply. What's the lasting impact of all these discoveries? How does this change our understanding of history and culture? What's the takeaway?
That's the key question. For you, I think the vital takeaway is that these findings fundamentally reshape the narratives about the region. They provide concrete physical evidence for Kashmir's deep, multi-layered, multicultural history.
Moving beyond just texts.
Exactly. Moving beyond sometimes fragmented literary accounts to physical proof of diverse beliefs, practices, civilizations that shaped the region for thousands of years. It really underscores how crucial dedicated archaeological research is and how important that interinstitutional support, like we're seeing now, is for uncovering and preserving India's incredibly diverse heritage.
Yeah.
It gives you a much fuller, evidence-based understanding, which is invaluable for any critical discussion, or certainly for exam preparation.
So we've really traveled quite a distance today, haven't we? From a dusty archive in Paris all the way to the rice fields of Baramulla. We've seen how just one photograph could unlock centuries of hidden history. And we've seen how these dedicated archaeologists are actively shifting the story of Kashmir, proving its past is, well, far richer and much more complex than maybe we previously thought.
Absolutely. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, these discoveries, they aren't just about digging up old stones. They're about understanding the profound layers of human civilization, the beliefs, the cultural practices, everything that shaped a region over millennia. They offer such invaluable insights, not just for scholars, but for anyone curious about our shared past, about how societies evolve.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other hidden layers of history might still be lying right beneath our feet, just waiting for us to pay attention? And how might unearthing them reshape how we understand ourselves collectively?
A powerful thought.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. If you found this discussion insightful, and if you want to keep exploring this fascinating world of knowledge with us, please do remember to like, subscribe, and maybe comment below. Let us know if you have more questions or other topics you'd like us to unpack.
Yes, please do.
Until next time, keep digging for knowledge.